Hello guys, welcome to our class number 7 of Unity, and on this class we're going to start building our game. So the game that I'm going to start teaching you right here, it's a game very famous on mobile called Flappy Bird. Okay, I'm going to teach you guys how to make a game like that. So I'm going to cover all the parts of this game from the very beginning until we have a proper game where you can win or don't win in the case of game over. Okay, so in this case we stop it in a condition class. I don't know if you guys remember from last class we had this. So basically we have a vector tree, and then we can see if the vector tree reach its goal or not. So basically what we are going to be doing today, it's going to make a new thing in programming, but at this time we are going to see something visual in Unity. Alright, so the first thing that we need to have in order to start any kind of game is our character, our player. So I'm going to teach you guys how to create a player and a very basic movement that we're going to be using in our game in order to make the game make sense. So our game is going to be 2D. So in this case, I'm going to show you guys how to import an image, or in any case, how to change this image to other kind of image that you may want. So first of all, you need to go here on game object, 2D object, and then sprite. You can see that you add a new game object to your hierarchy. We are not going to be using this test right here, so I'm going to delete this. And our new sprite, the one that we created, it's invisible right now because it doesn't have any kind of image in it. But don't worry, let's change that. But before it, what I'm going to be doing right here is to change its name from new sprite to player. I think it makes more sense. So I'm going to go right click on the mouse over the game object. I'm going to go to rename, and then I'm going to put player. Okay, that's the name that we're going to use in our player. Right now it's easy to recognize this one in the hierarchy. The player right now is invisible. It doesn't have any kind of a visual. We can pick any kind of image and put inside of Unity. And Unity already have some images that we can test. So if I go here on Sprite Render, I'm gonna open. You can see that Sprite is empty. It says none sprite. It means that it doesn't have any kind of image attached to it. That's why it's not appearing on the screen. It's invisible. If you click on this circle right here on the right, it's gonna open all the images that our project have. Right now you only have the images that is from Unity. But anyway, we can use one of them just to test, and then after we can replace to an image that we like. So as an example, I'm going to select this circle right here, knob. I'm going to double click it, and you can see that it's very tiny. So what I'm going to do right here is to make it bigger so we can see it easily on the game. How we make it? I think we learned it on the first class. We go on the scale tool right here, and then we click on the middle of this white square and drag. So we can make the image looks bigger. Or we can go here on the scale and change to whatever scale we have. It was 1 before, right now it's 11. So we can change to 11. I think it's going to make more sense. I'm changing to all the coordinates, X, Y, and Z. Okay, then we have our image. It doesn't look nice, I know, but we can change that after putting a high resolution image instead of this ball right here. So that's the player. In order to have our game, if you ever play Flappy Bird before, you know that the player needs to fall due to gravity, and then we can control jumping it. So let's make this kind of control right here. First of all, in order to put some simulation of gravity inside of our game, we need to add a component to the player to simulate this gravity. The component responsible for it is RigidBody 2D. We have RigidBody for 3D games, and we also have RigidBody 2D for 2D games. So I'm going to select player, and I'm going to add component. So you can see right here, add component. I'm gonna click on it, and then I'm gonna write here, RigidBody. as I said before, we have two different options. Rigid body normal, like for 3D games, and rigid body 2D. That's the one that we're going to use right now. I'm going to click on rigid body 2D and open right here. You can see that there's already a lot of definitions right here. We are not going to play with it, but the important part is that right now we have gravity scale equals to 1. It means that this will fall down. So if I play this, you can see that it falls, right? Okay, right now we have our rigid body working fine. One thing that we need to do though is to make this player goes back with an input. Let's use what we learned until now and a little bit more that I'm going to explain next. So we have this script right here called condition from our last class. We're not going to use this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete this script so I don't get confused by it in the future. So I'm going to select this and delete. In order to have our controller of the player, I'm going to create another script, one responsible for the movement of this player. So I'm going to go with right click on the mouse, create, and then C# script. The name of the script is going to be player movement, so I don't get confused by it and I know exactly what the screen is for. So I'm going to double click it and open on the script. Alright, so we have our script right here. We saw this 1000 times. Let's use it one more time. One thing that we need to do is to use our rigid body. This component right here. We need to use that rigid body because that rigid body have a function called add force. If we use that function from this component, we can add force to the object. We can add force to any direction, and each direction is defined by a vector3 variable that we saw last class. How we get the vector, this component, rigid body, from player to the script? That's easy. We can save this information inside of a variable, and it's not going to be an integer variable or float or string or boolean. It's going to be a class variable. It means that the type of the variable is going to be the same type of the class. It's going to have the same name. And then we link one variable to the component, and then we can use all the informations from that variable as well as some functions. We're going to be doing that with rigid body and other components from now on. We can save components information inside of our variables and then use these variables to do whatever we want. In this case, it's going to be add force. So I'm going to start creating the variable. Public, because it's going to be public. The name will be, the type will be rigid body 2D. If you get confused about the type, it's the same name right here. Rigid body. I guess maybe, let's see, maybe rigid body doesn't have a capital B. If it does have, Unity will get angry to me and say to me, but I don't think it have. It needs to be equal to what we have in Unity editor. Rigid body 2D, and the name of the variable can be anything, but in this case I'm gonna call it RB, just because it's easier, and I know that RB stands for rigid body. Another variable that we're going to need is force, and this is just to control how much force we can apply to our character. So it can be a float or integer variable. I'm going to use a float variable. I think it's going to suit better in this case. So I'm gonna skip a few lines, public, float, and then force. The force, maybe 100 will be fine, but we can change that later to see if suits better. Just to test, what I'm going to do is, on start, I'm going to apply force with rigid body, and force will be the variable force. So let's try to do it. I'm gonna call the name of the variable RB and then get some function. How do I get any kind of information from a variable? In this case, you can get information or do some functionality as it is a class variable. So dot, you always put dot, and then the function. The function is add force. Remember that all function starts with a capital letter. So if it starts with a capital letter, that's a function. It's going to do some functionality. If it starts with a lowercase letter, it means that it's a property that we can change or get the information for do something. In this case, it's just add force. So add force, and then I'm gonna write like this. Inside of the parentheses, I need to put a direction and multiply by the force. The direction, as I said before, is a vector tree. We can play with this. So here on public, I'm going to do a variable called vector tree direction. Public vector tree direction equal new vector tree. Direction is going to be anything. I'm going to play with up. So it's going to be 1 in Y and 0 in X and Z. So it's only going to go up. So here on add force, what I'm going to apply is direction, multiply it by force. As you saw on the last class, if you multiply a vector tree direction by a float, what it does is just multiply all the components. So what I will end up having is 0 on X, because 0 multiplied by 100 is 0, 1 on Y, 100 on Y, because 1 multiplied by 100 is 100, and 0 on Z, because 0 multiplied by 100, it's 0. So basically what I'm adding right here, it's a vector tree that have 0 on X, 100 on Y, and 0 on Z. Of course, it's easier to change this because if I change the force, it changes this math operation right here. So it's very convenient to use force in this case as a variable, because then I can control its magnitude without changing the direction. So here, RB is the name of the rigid body, add force is the function, and it receives direction multiplied by force. So that's the final direction of where it's adding force. Remember that it's on the start, so it only gets one shot. It's not gonna do every single frame, only in the start. So let's test this to see how it goes. So I'm gonna save this, and just to be more visual, what I'm going to do is to remove the gravity scale of the player, because right now it's going to go down. With add force up, it's maybe too weak to we see some kind of result. So what I'm going to be doing right here, just testing, is to make the gravity scale right here in the rigid body 2D. Right now it's 1. I'm going to leave it as 0, just as this example. Then later we are going to return this to 1 to make the real deal. So okay, so gravity scale is equals to 0. Alright? So basically right now, what I'm going to do is to apply the script to the player. And also you can see that RB is equal to non-rigid body. It means that Unity does not know which rigid body we are using. We need to link it to the rigid body from our player. So here on the circle, I'm going to click in it, and then you can see the option, all the game objects in the hierarchy that have rigid body. In this case, only player, and that's the one that we want. So I'm going to select this. Alright, we are good to go. We have rigid body equals to player, force equals to 100, and direction 0, 1, and 0. Let's see if it's too strong. I'm gonna play the game. You can see that it's going up. That's because the force applied to it is up. What happens if I change the Y to -1? It's gonna go down because the force right now is applying to down. What happens if I go with 1 on Y and 1 on X? Right now I have a diagonal. What about its negative on X? The other diagonal. Okay, so that's funny. We can change the direction based on the X, the vector tree that we have. That's pretty cool. Of course, that's not what we want. What we want is this to have some gravity, and it only jumps when we press space. Okay, so let's do this. But before, we need to go back to rigid body and change back the gravity scale to 1. Okay, it's very important because I want the gravity to exist in our game. Okay, so gravity scale equals to 1. Going back to the script, what we have right here is that we are adding force in the beginning, in the start. Let's change a little bit to only add the force if I press space. So I'm going to delete this in start and I'm going to write an if. If the condition right here, it's not going to be a relational operation or a logical operation. It's going to be from another function from the class input. The function is get key down and the key is going to be space. So in order to tell Unity that I want the if to enter if I press get key down, I need to write the whole function. And be careful, this needs to be inside update, because if it's inside update, I know that this if is checking every single frame, and that's what I want. I want exactly when it knows that I press space on the keyboard, I want it to enter the if and then apply the force that you just saw. So the condition here on if will be equal to input, that's the class of inputs, dot, and then I'm going to put the function that gets the information of if the key space is being pressed or not. The function is get key down. I'm going to open parentheses again, as is a function, and inside of this function I'm going to put what key I want to check, and the key is space. But in order to say space in this case, I need to write key code to all keys dot space. Alright, so if I press space, it means that this will return true and it will enter the if. If it enters the if, I want to add force. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. RB, add force, and that direction, multiply it by force. Alright, right now every single frame I will check if I press space, and then if I press space, it's gonna enter the if and then make the force happens like we saw last time. But check this every single frame. That's important, right? That's why it's inside update. Okay, so I'm going to save this. And play the game. Okay, the direction is wrong. I want it to go up, and it's not going up. It's going to the side as well. And I think maybe the force is a little bit too weak for this example. So what I'm going to be doing right here is to change x to 0 in order to only go up, and change the force to 500. I think that's enough force to keep this in the air. And I'm going to play again. Okay, right now, if I press the if I press space, you see that the ball goes up kind of Flappy Bird does. And if I don't press anything, it falls. Of course, you can play with it. You can make different kinds of direction. Let's say that if I put if 1 on x right here, I could have something like this. Okay, maybe that's what you want. Or what I could do is to diminish the force, something like 300, not that force. So you need to click more times to keep it on the air. You see, it's like more heavier. Alright, with this movement right here, we are controlling the gravity. Actually, the gravity is always there, but we are controlling the force that we have inside of the ball. In this case, we can start making more movements from this. So the basic movement of our player, it's going to be this ball right here. Another thing is we can replace this image of the sprite render from this ball right here to any kind of image. Okay, it doesn't need to be this ball. It could be, let's say, this square, it could be a checkpoint, it could be any image right here. So what if you wanted an image from outside? Let's say, what if I wanted to put a bird in here, as we have in Flappy Bird? Alright, so we have this folder called bird. If you download this folder right here, you can have it drag it down to Unity. It's very easy. We just need to drag and drop from Windows and drop right here. Once we do it, it's going to import all the folder, okay? Other way that we can do it is right click on the mouse and import new asset. And then you just choose the image from here, the folder in this case. Bird right here is inside of a script. I imported to the wrong place. So what I'm going to be doing right here is to drag and drop bird, the folder bird, into assets. So we have with a different folder right here. It's still a little bit confusing. So what I'm going to be doing is create a new folder, call it res from resources, and then drag and drop bird to resources. Alright, so right now we have resources, and inside of resources we have bird. It's not in the same script right now, folder as script. If you want, you can also create the folder and then import directly to the folder. As an example, what I'm going to do is just to pick one frame. We're not going to use all the frames right here. I'm going to go to the player and drag and drop the first frame to Sprite. Wow, that's huge. It's because the scale is equal to 11. Let's go back this one to 1. So scale equals to 1. Other way of doing it, if you want, is to click on the player, scale, and then diminish a little bit. Alright, right now we have our bird flying as a flat bird. Okay, I hope you guys like it. In the next class we are going to see a little bit more about making the map, so these look more to Flappy Bird. And later we are going to start doing more scripting to make sure that the map itself be a challenge for our player right here, and we can start our game. Thank you very much. See you on the next class.